Hi guys, Evette Rose here, and here we're going to be diving into how to deal with failure. Hi everyone, Evette Rose here. Guys, I'm really looking forward to diving into this mini workshop here with you today, where we're going to be checking out how can we deal better with failure, because failure sucks. I get it. It's not the most pleasant experience to have in life, especially when we were so focused and so set on having a certain outcome, and then that outcome didn't manifest or roll out or play out in the way that we wanted it to. I get it. It sucks. Now, one thing that I've learned with failure when I would go through it, and I kind of like recognizing when you feel it, a lot of people don't even realize that they stuck in what I would call the failure syndrome, and we just kind of like adapt to it like it's a lifestyle, especially if you feel like you're always failing. We get stuck into that cycle, that mindset, and I've absolutely been there. Or we can just have that one-off experience and it just causes a person to spiral. I've absolutely been on all these ends, and I'm sure that you can probably relate to that in one way or another. Now, one of these parts and aspects that you probably will start to feel is to have a sense of hopelessness. It's almost like, oh my God, I keep trying, and it's just not working. It's not really building a strong self-esteem, is it? Especially if you're already trying to do something that will give you a boost of confidence, whether it's financial, personal, or whether it's in maybe your career, in whatever area it is. Of course, when we do something, we have that outcome, that vision of we made it. I see myself on this different level or this different perspective where I have done something that I haven't been able to do before. Despite of that outcome that you feel or that you have, or at least that you were trying to create, for me, something what I've learned when I look at failure, the harder it is for me to digest and to process the failure would normally indicate to me the level of attachment that I had to what I was doing. Now, we're going to be diving into that in a few minutes, because this is where this was really hard for me to I grappled with this quite a lot, and especially to start to befriend failure rather than seeing it as like it's the enemy, you're the worst. It's like it's something because I'm not good enough or I'm not smart enough. It's nothing to really do with that. Now, when we're going to be looking at also, just I want to touch on just a few more other symptoms when people are stuck in what I would call like the failure syndrome a little bit, is anxiety. A lot of people struggle with anxiety. So when we fail something, there's this anxiety, and often even it can be like a mild paranoia or a full-blown paranoia, because now it's like, oh my God, am I going to fail all the time? And it's not really even about the failure. It's about how the failure made them feel, that they start to fear. Right? So it's sometimes not even the failure itself, it's how it makes us feel at the end of the day. So I'm starting to plant a seed already for you that we can have in the back of our mind to help you to understand, what is it that really triggers you about failure? Is it the actual thing that you failed, or is it really about how it's making you feel? So another point also here when we look at failure is feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, right? Especially if you've put all your eggs in one basket, you've tried everything, and then you put it out there into the world, or you take action and it just collapses. It just doesn't work. Of course, now we're going to feel, well, I don't have any other options. I don't have any other resources to turn to. So this is actually a really good point that I want to make here with you guys already. If that is you, then it's always important that when you are about to do something, I personally at least love to have 3 backup plans. I always have 3 backup plans, because sometimes things are not just going to work out the way that we want it to work out. That's just life. Sometimes it's because of our own errors. Sometimes it's bad timing. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. Sometimes it's because we have the wrong approach. Sometimes we add the wrong tools to create a certain outcome. The list can be endless. Sometimes we don't have the right team players in our team. Whatever the reason at the end of the day can be, is that feeling of unresourcefulness. It sucks. And that's normally where I would spiral, is that unresourceful feeling and feeling of impatience. Like it has to happen now. Like it had to already, like when I want to do a project and I'm busy now, I'm like, oh, it should have happened yesterday already, even though the deadline is maybe in 2 weeks. That was how impatient I, for example, could be. So this is something that's really super important to have a look at as well, because when we feel unresourceful, when we're doing something, look at your mindset. Look at what you're layering into this foundation of trying to create and do something. You're not setting up the most powerful foundation. If you're doing something, if you're taking action towards your projects, of course we have, consciously we're excited, we're thinking it through, or at least I hope that you are, because if we don't think plans through properly, of course there's quite a big chance of it failing. But sometimes failure in itself is not the issue. What if you were subconsciously sabotaging your success? And failure is actually a symptom. It's not even the end result of maybe a mistake that you made. Maybe failure can even be a symptom because you have a fear of becoming successful. Maybe because you have a fear of, getting what you want. Maybe you have a fear of being happy. This is all aspects to consider. Because sometimes when we think of failure, we think, boom, it's just that, it's just failure. Oh, I'm not good enough. I don't want to do it again. No, it goes a lot deeper than that. And I'm sure you can start to see how this is unraveling for you as well. Because when we struggle with failure, the thing that we, of course, need the most is encouragement and to have supportive relationships around us. If you don't have that, then you're going to feel that, especially if you feel unresourceful as well, you're going to feel like you're sinking even deeper into that unresourceful state. I have you guys back. There we go. Thought I lost you there for a minute. So this is a great example of how we can spiral. And let me tell you, spiraling absolutely sucks, because when we start to feel that state of unresourcefulness, we think, I can't do it. I don't have the people. I don't have the money. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have a better solution. Now we become fully focused on just this lack, right? So much lack that we're now feeling on top of the failure in itself. So this is a bit of a delicate situation. And I know how fast I can sometimes spiral when my mind is feeling a little bit negative, when I'm feeling a little bit down as well. And now at the end of the day, when we also now look at this lack state, as I would call it, we also now remember, if most of you are familiar with my teachings, I talk a lot about the RAS, which is the reticular activating system. Now, this is a part of the brain that basically filters in what you're focused on. So if you're always focusing on and feeling stressed about what you don't have, and I'm stuck, I can't find a solution, I'm useless, I'm not good enough, I don't have the support that I want and need. Now, that's your emotional and energetic state. So what's happening is that the RAS filters now starts to align itself with people and circumstances that's going to probably exasperate how you're feeling, because that's what you're focused on. In most cases, we're blissfully unaware of the fact that we're feeling this way. We just know that we feel really crappy, we feel really unhappy, we don't feel good, we feel negative. We don't really break down in terms of steps or detailed points why we feel the way that we do. But now the problem starts to come in when that spiral comes, right? Because now you feel it. Your environment is validating how you're feeling, but it's only validating what you're feeling because of how you feel. Now it's easy to say, well, just change how you feel and your world will show you a different picture. Well, that's great. It's not that easy. I get it. I totally get it. That's been my path as well. And it's one thing to become aware of when you spiral, because sometimes people can spiral, and I know that I have so fast that, well, it's just like boom, and there's my new reality, boom, there's my new emotional state, and I just feel like I'm completely powerless to it, right? So, and when I'm in that state, I'm not productive, I'm not creative. You can't find or see a solution when all that you're feeling, you're faced with, is problems. Because if you're stuck in that place of lack, your environment is going to make you feel that there's more of this lack. You're not going to align with the abundance of solutions and choices that you have around yourself right now. And now you probably might be sitting there going, well, fuck it, man, that sounds great. Well, how does this even work? Well, that's exactly the point. You can't even see it because of how you're feeling. You have to actually allow yourself to be entertained by the idea even. That's how we start. Just by the idea that there can be a solution, by the idea, well, maybe I am good enough. There's so many steps that you can go down. And for me also, what I love to do in the past would really help me when I was really like at my low moment. I actually Googled successful people's absolute worst failures. And that was like, wow, it's not just me. Look at how these people failed. Miserably failed. And when I look at my failure, it's like, it's actually not that bad. I'm actually doing really great. But apart from that, the point that I'm trying to make is that you're not necessarily the problem. It's everyone that goes through phases and stages of failure. This is where it all starts. No one is immune to failure, and that includes me and you, and we've all experienced that. So what sets a lot of people apart from successful people is that successful people, of course, they also spiral, but they got a grip on their mindset. Our mindset is fundamentally important. I mean, it's something that it took me a while to also master. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was easy or that, you know, it happened overnight. It's a process to constantly reprogram yourself to understand that even though something went wrong, there can be a solution. But if I can't see it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. And that's the catch, is that slight gray area where you have to catch yourself and realize, well, okay, I'm feeling this, and this is just a feeling, and that's what it is. And this is where the mind can now come in by practicing mindfulness and actually telling ourselves, all right, I'm feeling this, and that's okay, first of all, because what I realized in my journey, in my path, is the moment I use resistance or anger or resentment in relationship to something that I'm trying to create, like now I'm coming from a place of lack because I failed, I'm this, I'm that, I'm thinking, and I'm spiraling. And now, when we start to feel angry or resentful because of the circumstances, now we're spiraling even more. Because what happens is that resentment, that anger, right? That now is becoming, it's almost like it densens you even more. Like you can't see past most things even more so now because of that anger. I mean, have you noticed that when you're angry, it's so much harder to be happy or to feel resourceful, to feel creative, to feel that you have solutions, or to feel abundant, right? It's almost the opposite emotion, the opposite mindset, the opposite frequency match of what you really would like to align with. So I would love to start an exercise with you guys that really, really helps me when I go through failure. And so let's do it. I would love to get you get your notepads out, or your phone, your computer, whatever it is that's easiest for you. And I'm going to start by asking you a question. And so the first question I would love to ask you is to think back to the last time or the last moment when you did experience a failure. And how did you feel when you experienced that failure, right? How did it feel? What did you think? How did you maybe even react in that moment, right? So think back to the last time when you failed something, or a moment that you can kind of like really remember, and let's write that down. How did you feel? Because we're going to break this down a little bit later, you'll see. I'm doing this with you guys, as you know by now. So for me, what I wrote down was, I didn't feel good enough. I just really, really didn't feel good enough. And I felt isolated, and I felt like I wanted to hide. So for me, it was when I was speaking at an event, and I didn't like how my speech went. Even though the crowd probably had no idea, I personally didn't feel good about it. And so, and of course, that for me at that moment, that's kind of like, of course, what counted. So how I felt was just worthless. I really didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I was competent enough to deliver a message in the way that I intended for it to be delivered. And as well as, you know, a feeling of isolation, like wanting to withdraw, like wanting to pull back, and like hiding. So it's kind of like the same. So the next question that I would love to ask you now is, now we have the emotional reaction. Now, we talked already a little bit about our emotional attachment to the outcome. And especially when we fail it, then the attachment that we had is almost exasperating the perceived failure that we had. So I'm going to show you how we're going to split this apart and how we're going to break this down so that you'll never look at failure the same. I will call it redo from now on. We don't fail. We only redo. That's it. All right? So my next question to you is, when you think back to whatever it is that you feel you failed, what is it that you emotionally needed, or what desired attachment or outcome, emotional attachment that you have to that project or goal? Meaning, what would you have felt if you did get it, or what was your emotional investment in it? Write that down. Okay, so what I wrote down here was to feel that my message is acknowledged, to feel that my message is heard and understood. And I feel that because I failed, I had to had a redo moment, I didn't feel that I achieved that, right? So now what I would love to do with you is to ask you another question here and that's gonna be, I invite you now to think of the same failure or the redo, and imagine that you're taking out the emotional desire that you had or had in the past to whatever it is the redo was. What was your emotional investment or emotional attachment to it? Write that down. Oh, sorry, no, we already did that. The question was, take it out and write down, how does the scenario look and feel like? How does the scenario now look and feel like? Let's check it out. Okay, so now I'm going to share here with you what I wrote down. For me, it was just another speech. It was just another day. I can always do it again. If I wasn't happy, the people look happy, so who am I to complain? And it was just another normal day. But now, guys, I get it. I understand if you're telling me, well, what if there's people that I disappointed? What if there's people that maybe relied on me for something? What if it goes deeper than, you know, maybe just a speech and a perceived idea that it maybe went wrong? Well, I get that. So now here's the thing. There are sometimes circumstances and people where we feel responsible, but we cannot take always full responsibility for how someone else feels or how someone else reacts, because at the end of the day, redos are going to happen. It's part of life. We have to accept it, right? It's absolutely life. Now, secondly, what's also important to remember is to know and understand that even though we had a desired outcome, sometimes it could be because our inner child wanted to please a parent or wanted to please a mentor or a teacher, and there's someone that you may be working with or someone involved in whatever it is that you're doing that kind of triggered that a little bit for you, which can exacerbate, of course, the deeper wounds behind why we feel so disappointed with the redo that we're facing and dealing with right now. So for me, what I had to learn was to be super realistic with my thoughts and my ideas about what I want to do, how I want to do it, time frames, all these things. I was Mrs. the queen of unrealism. I don't even know if it's a word, but you get my point, right? Like, I was always so impatient. Everything had to happen yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, yesterday. So that's a really good point to make. And it was hard for me to overcome that. It was really hard. I almost had to train my mind that it's okay, we can wait one more day, we can do something else while we wait for this other thing to happen. Oh, but it's gonna fail if I don't do it on time, or whatever the case might be. Make sure that whatever thoughts you have around your goals and your projects are realistic, because sometimes I noticed with myself that I would actually sabotage projects and I would actually fail like miserably, a miserable redo, because I had such a goddamn fear of getting what I want. And that all boiled down to a fear of being happy. Failure was not the problem. It was actually my deeper fears. It was my self-worth. This was now my self-esteem that came into play, and rather than it just being a failure. So now it also begs the question, if you did succeed, what would you get that you have a fear of getting if you did succeed? That's another great question to ask yourself. And the answer to that question can probably help to set you on a path of less self-sabotage, of less struggles, because sometimes things become unnecessarily hard because we have a fear of getting what we want. Now, who or what made you perhaps feel guilty or unworthy or shameful for getting things that you wanted or that you worked towards and that you feel maybe there was a dream that you had? Sometimes these voices from the past can continue to influence our quality of life, but it's time to kick its ass and kick it to the curb. So guys, there you have it. I do hope that it helps, and thank you so much for being here with me. See you next time. Bye guys.